Taemin sat in his private study pod at the Galactic Institute of Sinological Studies, his sensory appendages twitching with annoyance. The smooth, pearlescent walls of the pod reflected his frustrated expression as he stared at the assignment notification floating in front of him. Earth humans, of all the species in the vast galaxy, his research professor had given him the most basic, uninteresting species to study. He reached out and swiped through the preliminary data files, barely paying attention to the information scrolling past his eyes. The soft hum of the pod's environmental systems did little to soothe his irritation. This was his fourth cycle of studies, and he had hoped for something more challenging, more exotic, perhaps the plasma beings of the Carina Nebula, or the quantum-shifting entities that inhabited the edge of known space. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, his outer membrane rippling with emotion. "I might as well study the reproductive habits of space rocks." A gentle chiming sound announced a visitor, and the pod's entrance membrane parted to reveal Hei-Yun, his study partner. Her crystalline form caught the pod's soft lighting, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. Unlike most of her kind, who preferred to maintain rigid geometric shapes, Hei-Yun had fashioned herself into a more fluid, artistic arrangement of crystals that somehow managed to convey warmth and friendliness. "You're projecting your frustration all the way down the hall," she said, her voice creating musical harmonics in the air. "What's troubling you?" Taemin gestured at the floating display. "Dr. Jinnah assigned me humans for my thesis topic." "Humans? Can you believe it? They're just another oxygen-breathing species that happen to figure out faster than light travel. There are thousands of those." Hei-Yun moved closer, her crystals rearranging themselves into what Taemin recognized as her thinking pattern. "Dr. Jinnah is known for her wisdom and assignments. Perhaps there's more to this than you realize." What could possibly be interesting about a species that spent most of its history fighting over patches of dirt? Taemin asked, but he began scrolling through the files more carefully at Hei-Yun's prompting. As they reviewed the data together, something unusual caught Taemin's attention. He paused the scroll, his sensory appendages extending in surprise. "This can't be right," he said, leaning closer to the display. "What is it?" Hei-Yun asked, her crystalline structure shifting with curiosity. "According to these survival statistics, humans have faced multiple extinction-level events on their home planet. Look at these numbers: massive asteroid impacts, global ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, worldwide pandemics." His voice trailed off as he continued reading. Hei-Yun's structure sparkled with interest. "That's not unusual. Many species face planetary disasters." "No, you don't understand," Taemin said, his excitement growing. "The models show they should have gone extinct at least 7 times. But each time, they survived. Not just survived, they came back stronger." He quickly pulled up comparison data for other known species. "Look at this. When the Centaurians faced their ice age, 98% of their population died out. It took them 50,000 years to recover. Humans, they developed tools, made clothing, learned to control fire, and spread across their planet during their ice age." Hei-Yun moved closer to the display, her crystals refracting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. "That is rather remarkable. What about the other extinction events?" Taemin was now fully engrossed in the data, his earlier frustration forgotten. "It's the same pattern every time. Supervolcano erupts, blocking out their sun. They adapt to hunting in low-light conditions and develop new food preservation techniques. Pandemic sweeps the planet. They create medicine and vaccines in record time. Every time their planet tries to kill them, they don't just survive, they turn it into an opportunity to advance." "Maybe that's why Dr. Jinnah assigned them to you," Hei-Yun said, her crystals glowing softly. "Sometimes the obvious holds surprising secrets." Taemin barely heard her. He was too busy opening more files, his sensory appendages quivering with excitement. "Their adaptability rates are off the charts. Look at their environmental tolerance ranges. They can survive in temperatures from what they call freezing to scorching. They can eat almost anything organic. They can live at altitudes from below sea level to high mountains. He paused, his outer membrane pulsing with sudden realization. Hey Yun, I think I've been looking at this all wrong. These humans, they're not just another oxygen-breathing species. They're something else entirely. Hey Yun's crystalline form shimmered with amusement. And to think, just a few minutes ago, you were comparing them to space rocks. Tae Min didn't even feel embarrassed at the gentle teasing. His mind was already racing with research possibilities. I need to dig deeper into this. There has to be more to their survival abilities than just luck. No species is this resilient without a reason. As Hye-yeon prepared to leave, she turned back to him. Looks like your mundane assignment might turn out to be quite interesting after all. Tae Min nodded, already immersed in the data again. As his friend left the study pod, he barely noticed the door membrane sealing behind her. He had a feeling this research was going to change everything. He thought he knew about species classification. Maybe, just maybe, Dr. Jinnah had given him the most fascinating assignment of all. The lecture hall of the Galactic Institute hummed with the quiet sounds of dozens of different species settling into their places. Professor Do-young stood at the center, her form shifting between solid and translucent as she prepared her teaching materials. Today's lesson on First Contact Studies had drawn an unusually large crowd, including several faculty members who rarely attended regular classes. Tae Min found a spot near the front, his sensory appendages extended in anticipation. Since discovering the surprising survival statistics of humans, he had been eager to learn more about this peculiar species. Next to him, Hye-yeon's crystalline form caught and reflected the soft light from the hover screens. Today, we will discuss humanity's first contact protocols. Professor Do-young began, her voice modulating to reach all types of auditory organs in the room. And I must warn you, what you're about to learn might challenge everything you think you know about species development. The professor activated the main display, showing a series of ancient human transmissions. Most species, as we know, evolve to a certain technological level and then wait to be discovered. It's a natural survival instinct. You don't announce your presence until you're sure you can defend yourself. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. Humans did the exact opposite. They began broadcasting their presence into space long before they had reliable interstellar travel. They sent out messages, music, images of themselves, maps to their planet. They were practically shouting their existence to the cosmos. A ripple of shock went through the audience. Tae Min noticed several students exhibiting signs of distress at such reckless behavior. But surely that was just their leadership. Someone called out. The general population must have been terrified. Professor Do-young's form sparkled with amusement. That's the most fascinating part. These broadcasts weren't just from their leaders. Their entire civilization seemed eager to make contact. They created countless stories about meeting alien life. They made art about it. They even sent out spacecraft with greeting messages and cultural information, just hoping someone would find them. She brought up another display, showing historical footage of the first official contact between humans and alien life. When we finally did make contact, their reaction was unprecedented. Most species respond with fear, skepticism, or aggression. Humans, they were excited. The footage showed humans of various ages rushing out to meet the first alien vessels, carrying signs, food, and what appeared to be gifts. Some were crying, others were laughing. Many were recording the event with their primitive devices. Now, keep in mind, Professor Do-young continued, this is a species that had survived multiple ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, and their own destructive tendencies. They had every reason to be cautious. Instead, they treated first contact like a celebration. Tae Min's appendages quivered as he recorded every detail. This aligned perfectly with the survival data he'd been studying. Somehow, humans turned potentially threatening situations into opportunities. The most remarkable aspect, the professor said, Bringing up new images was their adaptation to interstellar protocols. Look at these records. Humans greeting alien delegations with everything from formal diplomatic ceremonies to casual social gatherings they called barbecues. They showed an unprecedented ability to match and mirror the social customs of each species they encountered. The display showed humans participating in various alien cultural rituals, sometimes clumsily, but always enthusiastically. They learned alien languages, adapted their environments to accommodate different atmospheric needs, and even modified their food preparation methods to suit alien digestive systems. Within one standard cycle, Professor Do-Young noted, humans had established diplomatic relations with 17 different species. For comparison, the average species takes 5 cycles to establish relations with even one other civilization. A student raised an appendage. But how did they overcome the natural fear response? Every species has it. Ah, the professor's form brightened. That's where humans show their unique characteristic. They do feel fear, quite strongly, in fact. But they have an even stronger drive: curiosity. Their historical records show countless examples of humans moving toward things that frighten them, just to learn more about them. She brought up one final display, showing a human settlement that had been modified to house 7 different species, each with their own environmental needs. This image was taken just 2 cycles after first contact. No other species has achieved this level of integration so quickly. As the lecture concluded, the hall buzzed with excited discussion. Tai Min remained in his seat, processing everything he'd learned. His initial dismissal of humans as a simple oxygen-breathing species seemed more embarrassing by the day. "Still think they're boring?" Hei-Yun asked, her crystalline structure twinkling with amusement. Ta Min's outer membrane rippled with enthusiasm. "They're amazing. They don't just survive. They actively seek out new challenges. It's like they're programmed to explore, to connect, to adapt." As they left the lecture hall, Ta Min's mind was racing with new questions. How did humans develop this unique combination of traits? What drove their seemingly contradictory nature of caution and curiosity? He had a feeling his thesis was going to be far more complex and far more interesting than he'd initially thought. "I need to review the first contact archives," he told Hei-Yun. "There has to be more to this story." His friend's crystals arranged themselves into what he recognized as a smile. "Looks like Dr. Jinnah knew exactly what she was doing when she assigned you this topic." Ta Min couldn't argue with that. With each new piece of information, humans became more fascinating. They weren't just another species that had achieved space travel. They were something entirely different, something that perhaps the galaxy had never seen before. The physical assessment lab at the Galactic Institute hummed with activity as various species conducted their research. Tai Min adjusted the environmental controls of his workspace, watching as Sung Ho's gaseous form swirled in the containment field next to him. On the other side, Ki Nam floated in a tank of specialized liquid, their fins moving gently as they studied the data streams. The lab's white walls were lined with monitoring equipment, each station adapted for different species' needs. Holographic displays flickered with constant streams of information, casting a soft blue glow throughout the room. The air was filled with the gentle whirring of machines and the occasional bubbling from Ki Nam's tank. "Look at this endurance data." Sung Ho's voice emerged from their gaseous form, creating patterns in the air. "Humans can run for hours without stopping. Most predator species can only chase prey for short bursts." Tai Min moved closer to examine the readings, his sensory appendages extended in concentration. "How do they maintain their energy levels?" "That's the strange part," Sung Ho replied, their gas form condensing slightly in excitement. "They sweat. They literally leak water to cool themselves down and keep going. It should be incredibly inefficient, but somehow it works perfectly for them." Ki Nam's fins rippled as they added their findings through the translation system. "Their temperature adaptation is even more bizarre. I've been studying their survival records. Humans have lived in environments from -50 to plus 50 degrees in their Celsius scale. With basic protection, they can survive even more extreme temperatures. Tai Min moved between their stations, checking their findings against his own research. The more they discovered about human physical capabilities, the more questions arose. He pulled up a new set of data on his screen, focusing on human healing patterns. "This can't be right," he muttered, running the analysis again. According to these readings, humans can continue functioning even while seriously injured. They've been documented running on broken legs, fighting with punctured lungs, and surviving injuries that would kill most species. Sung Ho drifted closer, their gaseous form showing signs of agitation. "That's impossible. The energy cost alone should be prohibitive." "Look at this case study," He Nam called out, their fins twitching with excitement. The holographic display above their tank showed footage of a human continuing to work despite multiple injuries. They call it healing on the go. Their bodies begin repairs while they're still active. The three researchers gathered around Ki Nam's display, each watching from their environmentally controlled spaces. The footage showed humans performing various activities while clearly injured, athletes continuing competitions, workers finishing tasks, even soldiers continuing to fight. Their pain response is equally fascinating. Tai Min noted, pulling up additional data. They can choose to ignore it. Most species are completely incapacitated by pain. It's a survival mechanism to prevent further injury. But humans can just decide it's not important right now. Sung Ho's gaseous form swirled in what the others recognized as their thinking pattern. It's as if they evolved to prioritize completion of tasks over their own physical welfare. That goes against every survival principle we know. There's more, Ki Nam added, their fins moving rapidly as they accessed more files. Their healing capabilities extend beyond basic repair. They can regrow certain tissues, adapt to lost limbs by strengthening others, and even rewire their neural pathways after brain injuries. Tai Min's appendages quivered with excitement as he compiled all their findings. It's like they're designed to be impossible to stop. They don't just survive. They adapt and keep going no matter what happens to them. The lab fell quiet as they all processed this information. The only sounds were the gentle bubbling of Ki Nam's tank and the soft hum of the environmental controls. "Do you think," Sung Ho began hesitantly, their form shifting slowly, "that this is why they weren't afraid of first contact? Because they're virtually indestructible by normal standards." "Not indestructible," Tai Min corrected, reviewing the data again. "They can definitely be killed, but they're remarkably hard to stop when they decide to do something. It's as if their bodies evolved specifically to allow them to push past normal limitations." Ki Nam's fins created small waves in their tank as they added another observation. "They even seem to get stronger from adversity. Look at these muscle development patterns. Stress and damage actually trigger improvement. They literally become stronger by being broken." The implications of their findings were staggering. Tai Min could see why some species might view humans as godlike beings. Their physical capabilities defied normal evolutionary patterns. They could adapt to almost any environment, continue functioning despite severe injury, and actually improve from damage that would cripple other species. "We need to expand our research," Tai Min decided, his appendages moving with determination. "If their physical capabilities are this unusual, what other aspects of their biology might we be overlooking?" As they returned to their respective stations, each researcher was lost in thought about the implications of their discoveries. Humans weren't just another oxygen-breathing species. They were something entirely different, a form of life that seemed to break all the rules they thought they understood about biological limitations. The lab's quiet was now filled with purpose as they dove back into their research, each determined to uncover more about these fascinating beings who could heal while running, fight while injured, and survive in conditions that should have been impossible. The physical paradox of human existence was becoming clearer and more incredible with each new discovery. The massive lecture hall fell into complete silence as Professor Yu Jin activated the main display screen. Hundreds of students from various species watched as a timeline of human development appeared in the air. Tae-min sat near the front, his research group clustered around him. Sung-ho's gaseous form contained in a portable field, Ki-nam in a hovering water sphere, and their newest members, Ji-woo and Min-ki, glowing softly in their energy forms. Professor Yu-jin's voice carried clearly through the hall. What you're about to see will challenge everything we understand about species development. She gestured at the timeline. The red marks show major technological developments. Watch what happens. The display began to move, showing human progress from their first tools. At first, the advancement markers appeared slowly. Simple stone tools, the control of fire, basic agriculture. Then something changed. Notice this point, Professor Yu-jin said, highlighting a section. This is approximately 10,000 years ago in human time. Look at what happens next. The advancement markers suddenly began appearing faster and faster. The gap between major discoveries grew shorter and shorter. Written language, mathematics, metalworking, steam power, electricity, nuclear physics, spaceflight. Each achievement came more quickly than the last. This is impossible, whispered Ji-woo, their energy form flickering with disbelief. Species don't develop like this. Progress should be linear, with clear steps between major advances. Professor Yu-jin nodded at the comment. Exactly. Every other known species follows a predictable pattern of development. It took the Centaurians 2 million years to progress from basic tools to spaceflight. The Rigelians needed even longer. But humans. She paused, letting the display show the ever-accelerating pace of human innovation. Humans went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years. A wave of murmuring swept through the lecture hall. Several students displayed signs of distress at such an unnatural development pattern. But how? Tae-min asked, his appendages quivering with curiosity. What makes their cognitive development so different? Professor Yu-jin brought up a new display, showing human brain scans. Their neural patterns are unique. When faced with a problem, humans don't just try to solve it. They imagine multiple possible solutions simultaneously. They can combine unrelated concepts to create entirely new ideas. We call it lateral thinking, but that doesn't fully capture what they do. Min-ki's energy form pulsed with interest, like combining wheels and engines to make vehicles. Exactly, the professor replied. But it goes deeper. Humans don't just combine existing ideas. They can conceptualize things that don't exist yet. They imagine possibilities, then work backward to make them real. Most species discover solutions through trial and error. Humans can envision a solution first, then figure out how to create it. The display changed to show various human inventions. Look at their entertainment devices. Many of the things they first imagined as science fiction became reality within decades. They didn't just discover possibilities. They dreamed them up, then made them real. Tae-min's research group huddled closer together, comparing notes as Professor Yu-jin continued. Ki-nam's water sphere rippled with excitement as they added data from their own research. Their learning pattern is equally unusual, Professor Yu-jin explained. Most species master one field at a time. Humans learn across multiple disciplines simultaneously. They make connections between seemingly unrelated areas of knowledge, leading to breakthrough discoveries. She brought up another chart, this one showing problem-solving patterns. When faced with an impossible situation, humans don't just accept it as impossible. They redefine the problem, change the rules, or create entirely new approaches. They don't see limitations. They see challenges to overcome. The lecture continued, but Tae-min's group was already deep in discussion, their various forms huddled around a shared datapad. They had been mapping human innovation against other species, and the patterns were shocking. Look at this, Sung-ho's gaseous form swirled excitedly. When other species hit a technological barrier, they stop and work on it until they solve it. Humans hit a barrier and immediately start working on 3 other things while still trying to solve the first problem. Ji-woo's energy form brightened. And sometimes solving those other problems gives them the answer to the first one. It's like they're playing a massive puzzle game, but they're moving all the pieces at once. As the lecture ended, Professor Yu Jin left them with a final thought. Humans don't just learn and adapt. They actively seek out new challenges. Their cognitive development isn't just fast, it's accelerating. Every discovery leads to multiple new discoveries. Every solution opens up new possibilities. Their problem-solving capability isn't linear, it's exponential. After the lecture, Tan Nin's group remained in their seats, processing what they'd learned. The lecture hall emptied around them, but they barely noticed, too engrossed in their discussion. This explains so much about their survival rate. Tan Min said, his appendages moving in excitement. They don't just endure disasters, they learn from them, improve their methods, and prepare for the next challenge. Min Ki's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. It's like they're programmed to never stop advancing. Every obstacle just makes them more determined to find a solution. As they finally left the lecture hall, each member of the research group was lost in thought about the implications of their discoveries. Humans weren't just another intelligent species. They were something entirely different, a form of life that seemed to defy the normal rules of cognitive development. The group agreed to meet later in the research lab. They had more questions now than when they started, but one thing was becoming clear. Understanding human cognitive development might be the key to understanding why other species viewed them with such awe. Their minds weren't just different. They were revolutionary in a way that no other species had ever encountered before. Dr. Hyun Soo's innovation lab buzzed with activity as Ta Min's research group gathered around the central holo display. The lab's walls glowed with data streams, and various testing chambers hummed with energy. Each member of the group had their own specialized environment. Sung Ho's gas containment field, Ki Nam's water sphere, and the energy stabilization fields for Jiwoo and Min Ki. Today, we're going to examine human problem-solving methodology, Dr. Hyun Soo announced, her tentacles gracefully manipulating the holo controls. I want you to look at this particular case study from their early space program. The display showed an ancient human space mission where something had gone terribly wrong. An explosion had damaged their craft, leaving the humans inside with failing life support systems. By all logical analysis, these humans should have died, Dr. Hyun Soo explained. They had limited resources, damaged systems, and no precedent for handling this type of failure. Now watch what they did. The group watched in amazement as the historical record showed humans on their planet working together to improvise solutions using only the materials available on the damaged spacecraft. They didn't just solve the problem. Jiwoo's energy form pulsed excitedly. They created completely new ways of using their existing technology. Look at how they modified their air filters using just spare parts and covering materials. Min Ki's glow intensified as they added their observations. The most fascinating part is how quickly they developed these solutions. Other species would have needed multiple test cycles. These humans did it in hours, while under extreme pressure. Ta Min's appendages quivered as he processed the information. It's like they thrive under pressure. The more impossible the situation, the more creative their solutions become. Dr. Hyun Soo brought up another series of case studies. This pattern repeats throughout their history. When humans encounter what they call impossible problems, they don't just look for existing solutions, they invent entirely new approaches. The display showed various human innovations, their development of medicine, their mastery of flight, their creation of global communication networks. Each advancement seemed to spawn multiple new fields of study. Look at this timeline. Sung Ho's gaseous form swirled excitedly. When they discovered radiation, they didn't just study it. They created multiple new sciences around it. Physics, medicine, energy production. They explored every possible application simultaneously. Kanon's water sphere rippled as they compared the data to other species' development patterns. Most species would take generations to fully understand one aspect before moving to the next. Humans just dive in everywhere at once. The group spent hours analyzing different cases of human innovation. They found patterns that seemed to defy conventional scientific development. Humans didn't wait to fully understand a concept before trying to use it. They would develop practical applications while still researching basic principles. Here's something incredible. Min-Ki announced their energy form brightening. Humans often create solutions for problems they don't even have yet. They call it theoretical research. They solve problems that only exist in their imagination. Dr. Hyun-Soo nodded, her tentacles moving in approval. This is perhaps their most unique trait. Other species innovate based on need. Humans innovate based on possibility. They don't ask, "Do we need this?" They ask, "Could this be possible?" The display shifted to show various human theoretical works that later became reality. Space travel, wireless communication, artificial intelligence. Many of these concepts had appeared in human fiction long before they became technical possibilities. They dream it first. Ta-Min realized, his appendages moving in excitement. Their imagination isn't limited by what's possible. They imagine what could be, then figure out how to make it real. Jai-Woo pulled up another set of data. And look at this. When they can't solve a problem with existing science, they create new scientific fields. When traditional physics couldn't explain certain phenomena, they developed quantum mechanics. When classical computing reached its limits, they started developing quantum computing. The group spent the rest of the day documenting cases where humans had turned theoretical concepts into reality within single generations. The pattern was clear. Human innovation wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary. They didn't just find new answers. They created new ways of finding answers. As they prepared to leave the lab, Dr. Hyun-Soo left them with a thought-provoking question. Consider this. What happens when a species that creates new sciences to solve impossible problems encounters truly alien challenges? What might they create when faced with the mysteries of the greater galaxy? The research group fell silent, each member contemplating the implications. Humans had achieved so much while isolated on their home planet. What would they do now that they had access to the knowledge and technology of the entire galactic community? Ta-Min's appendages moved slowly as he organized his thoughts. Maybe that's why other species see them as godlike. It's not just what they've achieved. It's what they might achieve. Their potential seems unlimited. The group left the innovation lab that day with more questions than answers. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Human creativity and innovation operated on a fundamentally different level than any other known species. They didn't just solve problems. They revolutionized the very way problems could be solved. As they dispersed to their respective quarters, each member of the research group found themselves wondering, if this was what humans could achieve in just a few thousand years of civilization, what might they accomplish in the centuries to come? The implications were both exciting and perhaps a little frightening. Da-Hyun moved quickly through the dimly lit corridors of the student dormitory section, her crystalline form catching the emergency lights. She had received several alarming reports from the dormitory monitoring systems about unusual activity patterns among students. What she discovered left her deeply troubled. In one study pod, she found 3 Centaurian students deliberately depriving themselves of their required hibernation cycle, attempting to stay active for extended periods like humans. Their natural bioluminescence had dimmed dangerously, indicating severe energy depletion. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her crystal structure flashing with concern. One of the students, their form barely glowing, answered weakly, "Humans can go days without sleep. We're trying to understand how they do it." In another section, she discovered a group of gaseous entities attempting to solidify their forms to match human physical capabilities. Their containment fields were struggling to maintain stability as they pushed their natural states beyond safe limits. Da-Hyun immediately called for medical assistance and reported the incidents to Dean Soo-jae. Within hours, the dean had convened an emergency faculty meeting in the central chamber. The faculty gathered in their various environmental bubbles and fields, Dean Suji's energy form pulsed with worry as she addressed the group. We have a serious situation developing. Students across multiple species are attempting to replicate human biological capabilities. They're endangering themselves in the process. Professor Yu Jin's tentacles moved in agitation. It's not just physical limitation. My students are attempting to alter their sleep cycles, their eating patterns, even their emotional responses to match human behaviors. That's not the worst of it, Dr. Hyun-soo added, bringing up a holographic display of student activity logs. They're forming human appreciation societies. Look at these numbers. Over 40% of our student body has joined these groups in the past cycle. The display showed students gathering in modified environments, attempting to recreate human social activities. Some had even started experimenting with human food preparation, despite their bodies being completely unsuited for Earth-based nutrition. Last week, Dahyun reported, I found a group trying to reproduce human adrenaline responses. They were deliberately exposing themselves to fear stimuli, trying to trigger what they called the human fight response. Dean Suji's energy form flickered with frustration. We can't have students risking their health like this. Their biology isn't designed for these activities. We need to take action. But as the faculty discussed possible solutions, reports kept coming in. Students had started organizing human lifestyle experiments. They were studying Earth history obsessively, trying to understand how humans develop their unique characteristics. In one particularly concerning incident, a group of aquatic species students had attempted to leave their water environments for short periods, inspired by how humans had evolved from sea creatures. If their emergency systems hadn't activated, they could have suffered severe damage. The fascination has spread too far, Professor Yu Jin observed. It's not just academic curiosity anymore. They're starting to view humans as something to aspire to, almost like religious figures. The faculty's attempts to restrict human-related research only seemed to increase student interest. Underground study groups formed. Students began sharing human historical records, analyzing human decision-making patterns, and even attempting to replicate human emotional responses. Ta Min and his research group found themselves at the center of the controversy. Their work had become popular among the student body, with many citing their findings as inspiration for their own experiments. We never meant for this to happen, Tai Min explained to Dahyun, his appendages moving anxiously. We were just trying to understand their capabilities. But the movement had taken on a life of its own. Students began organizing interspecies gatherings modeled after human social events. They created study programs focused on human problem-solving methods. Some even started wearing modified environmental suits designed to simulate human physical limitations. Dean Suji's final attempt to control the situation, a temporary ban on human-related research, backfired dramatically. Students protested by adopting human-style peaceful resistance techniques, organizing sit-ins modified for various species' needs, and creating petition systems based on human democratic processes. Don't you see? One student leader argued during a faculty meeting, even our protests are proving our point. We're using human methods because they work. They're effective. They get results. The situation reached its peak when a group of energy-based students attempted to modify their own molecular structure to achieve human-like physical form. The resulting energy surge triggered emergency protocols throughout the institute. As the faculty struggled to maintain order, they faced an uncomfortable reality. Their students' fascination with humans wasn't just academic curiosity. It had become something deeper, a recognition that humans represented something unique in the galaxy. Perhaps, Dr. Hyun-soo suggested during yet another emergency meeting, we need to change our approach. Instead of trying to suppress this interest, we should guide it. Help them understand that what makes humans remarkable isn't their specific capabilities, but their unique way of adapting and solving problems. The controversy had brought the Institute to a breaking point, but it had also revealed something important. The students' attempts to emulate humans, though dangerous, demonstrated just how revolutionary human capabilities appeared to other species. As the faculty worked to develop new guidelines and safety protocols, they had to acknowledge a simple truth. Their students' fascination with humans wasn't going to disappear. The best they could do was help them study and understand humans safely, without risking their own unique biological natures in the process. The grand presentation hall of the Galactic Institute hummed with anticipation. Every seat was filled with beings from across the galaxy, faculty members, students, and even visiting scholars. Multiple environmental fields shimmered throughout the space, accommodating the diverse biological needs of the audience. Ta-Min stood at the center, his sensory appendages steady despite his nervousness. Behind him, holographic displays showed his research data, the culmination of his intensive study of humans. Dr. Jinnah sat among the academic board members, her form radiating calm confidence. Throughout our research, Ta-Min began, we've seen many species refer to humans as gods. At first, this seemed like simple exaggeration. Now, after extensive study, I understand this perception. But I've also discovered why it's incorrect. The displays behind him shifted, showing various human achievements, failures, and recoveries. Humans aren't gods, he continued. There's something far more remarkable. They're a species of contradictions that somehow work in perfect harmony. Keenan's water sphere bubbled with approval from the front row, where Ta-Min's research group watched. Sung-Ho's gaseous form swirled gently, while Ji-Woo and Min-Ki's energy patterns pulsed in sync with the presentation. Look at their pattern of advancement, Ta-Min said, bringing up new data. They're cautious enough to test their environment for danger, yet brave enough to explore it anyway. They're logical enough to develop complex sciences, yet imaginative enough to envision impossible dreams, and then make them real. The audience watched as he displayed case after case of human resilience and innovation. Their physical form is remarkably fragile compared to many species. They have no natural armor, no extraordinary strength, no built-in weapons, yet they've survived challenges that have destroyed seemingly superior species. Dr. Jinnah's expression remained neutral, but her form rippled slightly with what those who knew her recognized as pride. But here's what makes humans truly unique. Ta-Min continued, his appendages moving with enthusiasm. Other species excel in specific areas: physical strength, technological advancement, environmental adaptation. Humans excel at everything simultaneously, and more importantly, they excel at combining different areas of excellence in new ways. He brought up images of human achievements, their cities, their spacecraft, their art, their scientific discoveries. They can be warriors and poets, scientists and dreamers, builders and artists, all at once. They don't see these as contradictions. To them, it's natural to be everything simultaneously. The academic board members shifted in their environmental fields, their attention fully captured. Even those who had been skeptical of human studies were leaning forward, engaged by the presentation. Their true power isn't in being superior, Ta-Min explained, but in their endless capacity to grow, adapt, and inspire others to do the same. They don't just survive challenges, they learn from them. They don't just solve problems, they develop new ways of solving problems. They don't just adapt to their environment, they adapt their environment to suit their needs. He paused, letting his next point sink in. And most remarkably, they do all this while maintaining their humanity, their capacity for empathy, creativity, and wonder. They can split atoms and write poetry about it. They can reach for the stars while still caring for the smallest creatures on their planet. The displays showed human responses to various crises, natural disasters, technological failures, environmental challenges. In every crisis, humans show the same pattern. They face the impossible, they adapt, they overcome, and they emerge stronger. Not because they're gods, but because they refuse to accept limitations. As Ta-Min concluded his presentation, the hall fell silent. Even the usual background sounds of various environmental systems seemed muted. He had just challenged the growing perception of humans as godlike beings, yet somehow made them seem even more remarkable. Dr. Jinnah was the first to speak. You began this research believing humans were unremarkable. What changed your perspective? Tan Min's appendages moved thoughtfully. I realized that what makes humans special isn't any single capability. It's their ability to be everything at once, to contain contradictions that would tear other species apart, and to thrive because of these contradictions, not despite them. The academic board deliberated briefly before reaching a unanimous decision. Not only was Tan Min's thesis approved, but they recommended establishing a full department of human studies at the institute. As the audience dispersed, Dr. Jinnah approached Tan Min. "You've discovered something important," she said, "not just about humans, but about how we study other species. Sometimes the most remarkable things appear ordinary at first glance." Tan Min watched as students gathered around the presentation displays, already discussing implications and possibilities. His research group joined him, each member adding their own observations and insights. The truth about humans wasn't that they were gods. The truth was both simpler and more profound. They were perfectly imperfect beings who turned their contradictions into strengths, their weaknesses into opportunities, and their dreams into reality. And perhaps that, Tan Min realized, was more remarkable than being a god could ever be.